Bibleman's coming and it's gonna be a ball.
Go get everyone you know.
Cause it's just about time for the Bibleman show.
It's the Bible, it's the Bible, it's the Bibleman show.
We're learning how to live and we're learning how to grow. Storytelling, picture painting, grooving, don't you know? Everybody get ready for the Bibleman show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie and television discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by sweet Shanzi Kovacs from the internet.
It's your old buddy, it's your old pal, sweet Chauncey from the internet.
And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and now we know why Charles was the one in charge.
You can't leave Willie Ames in charge of nothing. Today, we are... We're doing something a little bit different here, and we have several people to blame for this. All fingers will be pointed. All shouting will commence very shortly. But we'd like to thank the people who made this episode possible and all the episodes possible that you hear on this here program. The people that support us over at patreon.com/HMP. We'd like to thank all 43 of you lovely, lovely people for helping, kind of keep this podcast along. You know who you might want to be like? You might want to be like our good friend Matthew, who has joined up on board and at the $5 a month. And Matthew, thank you for doing that. And Sean, I believe we need to give Matthew his official HMP nickname.
Matthew's new official HMP nickname, by the powers bestowed upon me from the good folks that brought you the internet. Your name is Anti-Bibleman.
Oh.
It's Auntie.
But it's spelled A-U-N-T-Y, like Auntie Bibleman. Like, we're going to your auntie's house. Which auntie? Auntie Bibleman.
No, Matthew, that's going to make more sense in about 5 minutes.
He just goes, unpledged.
I'm gonna save it for a Dinger Zone, but maybe next week for the Dinger Zone. I'm gonna come up with a list of potential nicknames to see if Sean approves of any of them, because I feel like I'm missing out on the nickname.
Well, here's the thing, Bruce. We would
You're
give
just terrible at it, Bruce.
Yeah, we can't.
That's why I'll come up with a long list and see if any of them get the Sean seal of approval, so the sweet Shanzi internet seal of approval, and we can use one someday.
I'm willing to give it a shot. And you know how you listen to that episode, everybody? You go over to patreon.com/HMP. And if you join up, you get pre-show, post-show, and, of course, the Dinger Zone. We do extra show. We do it like an entire little short extra mini show every single week for you guys. It's another 20 minutes worth of us gabbing on about news or you name it, actually. We can get into some really odd and strange places and stuff like that. So, and you get to hear about Bruce's earthquake adventure. So check that out. Patreon.com/HMP. And, of course, every month, no matter what level you are in Patreon, you get to vote on the movies that, we hand you a handful of movies and we say, you guys tell us what we want or what you want us to watch. You become our bosses, which usually can work out pretty well, but we'll see how this time. So here were your options. The Standby of Sam J. Jones and the Spirit, the Human Target pilot, which got 0 votes. So I think that not a lot of hope in that one.
Challenge accepted.
Return of the Swamp Thing, Batman versus Dracula. But the winner, by a pretty darn good margin, is Bibleman. That's right. A Willie Ames production from 1995. And, Sean, I believe you were the one who kind of put this on the list as we were going through everything, yes?
I was, and it seemed like a really great idea at the time. It seemed like we'd have a lot to talk about with Bibleman, which I think we're going to. But I think mostly it's just you guys yelling at me for about 45 minutes. I'm okay with that. But, we've all brought really bad ideas to the table at some point.
At this point, 6 years in, everybody's gotten their hand in the horrible basket. You're right.
Exactly. So I take full responsibility for this one. Man, what a long hour of watching a television show. Oh my God, it's so long. But it's also one of those things where you can literally say to yourself, I don't think it's going to get much worse than this. This is the worst thing. This is the worst thing we've ever seen, and it's not even close. And I thought that Up and Away, the Superman musical, was the worst thing we'd ever seen. I was wrong about that. This is the worst thing we've ever seen.
Hey, this show would have benefited from a little vitamin Loretta Swit. You know, Loretta Swit would have raised this to a whole new level.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't get the reference at first, but she is in the Superman musical. I forgot.
Oh, she is the Superman musical. I can't believe you remembered anything else about it.
I just remember him going, pow, bam, I'm Superman. Like, it was really awful. But at least the people who were responsible for the Superman Broadway show could sing instead of a full hour of children with no talent singing about the Bible and religion.
I'm not gonna dump on the children. Those children were fine singers.
I'll do it for you.
They sang
Go
what
ahead.
they were given to sing. I've heard a lot of kids sing in my life, and those kids were just fine.
Well, let's get to it, because we've done something not only with bringing this to the show and everything, and you people over at Patreon voting on it. You've also given these guys an even harder job. Not me, because I don't do any work over here. But let's go ahead and do it. I cannot wait to see the rabbit that you pull out of a hat on this one, Bruce. How does Bibleman Comics, what do you got?
Well, I think when talking about the combination of comics and religion, there's no better topic to discuss than tracts. Now, the distribution of tracts predates the development of the printing press, with the term being applied by scholars to religious and political works at least as early as the 13th century. They were used to disseminate the teachings of John Wycliffe in the 14th century, not to be confused with Wycliffe Jean for you, Adam.
Oh, man, boy, do I hate that guy.
As a political tool, they proliferated through Europe during the 17th century. They have been printed as persuasive religious material since the invention of Gutenberg's printing press, being widely utilized by Martin Luther during the start of the Lutheran movement of Christianity. Tracts were used throughout the turbulence of the Protestant Reformation and the various upheavals of the 17th century. They came to such prominence again in the Oxford movement for reform within the Church of England that the movement became known as Tractarianism. After the publication in the 1830s and 1840s of a series of religious essays collectively called Tracts for the Times. But I don't want to talk about Martin Luther. I don't want to talk about Henry Edward Manning or Edward Pusey. I want to talk about the man who took tracts to an art form, a comic art form. And, of course, that man is Jack Chick. Now, Chick was born in 1924 and was not initially a religious man. In fact, his first love wasn't even drawing. He was drawn to the stage, if you'll pardon me a very poorly placed pun. He participated in lots of theater growing up and even studied drama for 2 years in college. Why only 2 years, one might ask? Well, a tiny little thing called WW2 took Mr. Chick off to the Pacific Theater, where he fought bravely for the Allies. After the war, he returned to the Pasadena Playhouse, where he met his future wife while working on a production there. Lola Lynn Priddle was a Canadian immigrant who came from a very religious family, and Chick has said that she was instrumental to his salvation. It was his wife who introduced Chick to the Charles E. Fuller radio show, The Old-Fashioned Revival Hour, and Chick said that he was converted while listening to an episode of this show. Now, guys, don't you wish our podcast could impact the world like that? Like maybe in 30 years, the next generation's version of Kevin Feige will say that he or she first wanted to make superhero movies because they listened to our show. Wouldn't that be great?
I like to think that's a world that exists.
Well, anyway, Chick also had a bit of talent with the pencil, so he decided to draw comic strips. He started off with single-panel comics akin to BC or Marmaduke, but predated both of those. He called this series Times Have Changed. These were secular comics, and I haven't seen any of those, so I can't really comment on the quality. But after converting to Christianity, Chick wanted to evangelize to others, but he was too shy to talk to people directly about religion. Chick heard from missionary Bob Hammond, who had broadcast in Asia's The Voice of America, that the Communist Party of China had gained significant influence among ordinary Chinese people in the 1950s through the distribution of small comic books. Chick also about this time began working with the prison ministry, and he created a flip chart of illustrations to use with his presentation, and he hit upon the idea of following in the footsteps of communist China, and he would create tracts. He would create witnessing tracts that he could give to people. In 1960, he self-published his first tract titled "Why No Revival?" in 1960. He then struck genius with his second tract in 1962. It was a little piece titled "A Demon's Nightmare." You see, I'm not just talking about chick tracts to have something with the religious theme to discuss. I'm talking about them because I unironically loved them as a kid. I say this with absolutely no intention of disrespect or sacrilege, but chick tracts were the absolute best horror comics I had access to as a kid. And as a kid, I was really into them. He officially established Chick Publications in 1970 in the most fun town in the world, Rancho Cucamonga, California. Now, initially, Chick wrote and illustrated all the comics himself. In 1972, he hired another artist to illustrate many of the tracks. Fred Carter illustrated them anonymously until 1980, when he was identified in an issue of Chick's newsletter. Now, the tracks themselves are approximately 3 inches high by 5 inches wide in dimension, so they're like a little flag-shaped publication. They're approximately 20 pages in length. The material was written in comic book format with the front panel featuring the title of the tract, and the inside back panel was devoted to a standard sinner's prayer. I suppose I should get to what made the tracts such good horror comics. The concept of malign influences led to the theme of spiritual warfare being frequently portrayed in the tracts. Chick considered all forms of witchcraft to be demonic, whether it was white magic or black magic. Chick also considered Halloween to be the devil's holiday, and he was opposed to Christians celebrating it, with one notable exception. Chick did not oppose Christians handing out his tracts instead of candy to neighborhood children. And that, my friends, is how young Bruce got his hands on these awesome indie comics. There was a great one about a Christian rock band that in actuality had signed a deal with the devil and were using the devil's music to steal away the souls of otherwise good Christian boys and girls. My all-time favorite is probably The Trick. It's a story of witches having a seance leading up to Halloween. They need to obtain more blood for their master, so they plan to put crushed up glass, needles, and razor blades in the candy they hand out. Oh, my gosh. You see how scary it would be for 11-year-old Bruce to read this right after he's quickly eaten about 3 pounds of trick-or-treat candy in a feeding frenzy his mother oft compared to a great white shark when blood was in the water? Now, people who disagree with the religious themes will frequently belittle the art in these comics, but it's honestly right on par with what you'd find in any EC comics, and it really worked to make them scary. They have devil worshippers, blood, witches, and poison. Tales of evil deals with horrific consequences are not uncommon, and there are pentagrams aplenty. There's one track that claims Bewitched is the devil's favorite TV show. Yes, there was a track dedicated to how evil the Dick Sargent vehicle Bewitched was. Complete with demons and flames around the TV room, while Satan himself looks remarkably like Doctor Strange as he sits on his lazy boy recliner. You just have to picture how mesmerized I am, even to this very day, looking at tiny pages with demons celebrating how many Ouija boards have been sold this year, and the fact there's no opposition to drugs whatsoever. I found a more recent tract that even exposed how the Harry Potter books mean that millions of children are destined to go to hell. Demons even rejoice if you read your horoscope in the newspaper. I worry that I may be starting to sound facetious, but honestly, these have cool horror art and are a lot of fun to read. Chick tracts are a truly collectible art form, but don't take my word for it. Just go online and look at some of the images. But let me warn you, there's going to be some atrocious homophobia there, and I'm not cool with that. But the one where Bewitched is all part of Satan's grand plan, that one's good to look at. But anyway, much like Bibleman tries to use a superhero to reach kids, Jack Chick did it with little comic books. And from very early on in life, I've always thought that a free comic book is always worth reading. And just a little FYI, a very authentic-looking Chick tract called The Good Morty was packaged with the first edition Season 1 Rick and Morty DVD box set. So just maybe Dan Harmon's a big fan, too.
Or Dan Harmon believes that you should be worshiping him. I'm not sure which.
Two things, because I didn't want to derail you.
Yeah.
One is that, Matt, I am sorry. For the first time in HMP history, I have to recall your nickname and give you your new nickname of Secular Man. That is your nickname, your HMP nickname by the powers bestowed upon me from the fine folks who brought you the internet. Your name is now Secular Man.
What a turnabout.
So that's one. Two is that I really doubt that, and I'm glad that we don't have the sort of influence where 30 years from now someone's going to say, oh, thank God that thing that Adam said on that one podcast. Because now I'm the most powerful man in all of comics. I'm really, really doubtful and glad that that is not going to happen.
You don't want me pointing and making decisions? Come on.
Well, you don't make decisions, so that's part one. But part two.
How dare you?
Oh, what's the last time you made a decision, Adam? But part two.
I woke up today.
Huh?
I woke up today.
Oh, buddy. You know what? I gotta give you. I gotta be easier on you. I forget how hard it is sometimes to be Adam Portrais. I'm sorry,
fragile boy.
I'll stop. I will throttle back. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But the second thing about that is that, with the exception of maybe our children, do you think that 20 years from now anyone's going to listen to this? I don't.
I think we're going to be like Sugar Man. There's going to be some small country that idolizes us.
Oh, wow.
Guatemala
Cool.
comes across the internet in 2029.
Or maybe we'll be like the podcasting equivalent of Eddie and the Cruisers. Like we were just ahead of our time. And in 25 years, every podcast will be just like this. And then there'll be this new appreciation for it and how horrible it was. We all died before anybody appreciated us.
We're like the
I'm
Chuck
appreciated
Berry of.
We all drowned in death water or liquid death, whatever that water was.
Oh, man. No, thank you. Check out the Dinger Zone to know what the heck we're talking about with that liquid death. So, Bible Man, everybody. Now, I'll say this, Bruce. I think while Sean may have been the one to bring Bible Man into the equation, Bruce was the one who decided what we should actually watch. And Bruce, by looking at some of these pictures of the covers of Bible Man, one can only assume are VHSs, by the way that they're presented. I think you may have picked some of the worst episodes because, listen to some of these titles. Silencing the Gossip Queen, The Six Lies of the Fibbler, something about commandos and confusion, blasting the big Game Master Bully. There's, interesting ones, but I think unless they're all the same, which they very well may be, I think you picked two episodes that are practically the same darn thing.
I picked episode 1 and 2. So these are I thought we'd be lost if we just jumped in the middle. I thought we'd need to understand what's the origin of Bible.
Can we
Man
please call this spade a spade, sir? The reason why you picked episode 1 and 2 is not because we get lost. It is because, like every nerd everywhere, you're a completionist. That is why you did it.
Now, maybe,
Not
and they were also both.
That is the exact number one prime reason why.
And they were both on YouTube, easy to find and watch. I'm glad I didn't pay like $9.99 to watch these. I'll tell you that right now. But I think we should explain Bible Man was neither a movie or a TV show. Bible Man came out only on VHS. It's
Right.
presented as a TV show. There were 2 episodes that came on one VHS tape that you had to buy. There was no channel. Even the Christian channels didn't want to do whatever they needed to do to show Bible Man. And I think they were made in Kansas City, which, I'm interested to see that Willie Ames wound up in Kansas City at some point in his life. But
it gets better than that. We'll get into that later.
But these were just it would be like a direct to DVD. Only it wasn't DVD. It was direct to VHS release, but it's TV show, not movie. So that's weird. I don't think there's a lot of 30-minute programs that would put 2 episodes on a VHS and had no exposure other than just hoping you bought it by accident or something. I really don't exactly know how these were marketed.
Well,
So,
that's
Bruce,
how a lot of
before we go any further, Bruce, you need to do the thing that you always do when it comes to stuff like this. You need to say the thing ahead of time about the difference between religion and the show.
Okay, so I do want to say that we may have some negative things to say about Bibleman, the TV show, or the movie. I don't know what to call it. The direct
TV
video.
show.
We'll call it a
episodic
TV show.
thing. Yeah, the TV show. But we do want to make it clear. I mean, we're talking about the production quality of the show, maybe some creative decisions made on the show. I don't want it to be misinterpreted as being disparaging of anyone's faith or disrespectful of anybody's religious beliefs. But at the same time, we got to have fun with what we talk about. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. But from my point of view, I'm only making jabs at the presentation and not necessarily the message.
And I'm not going to say anything here that's going to piss Krista off. But what I am going to say is
don't make that promise, because
any new listeners because of Bible Man. The people who are listening to the show are listening to the show, and they already know our main thing is not to offend folks. We wanna
Yeah,
let
and
everyone know that.
I'm also not looking to get like negative review bombed from people who've never listened to the show because they heard we didn't like Bibleman.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And the thing is, though, for me at least, it's like that's the kind of easy punching down that this thing could have, and that's too easy. But like, there's enough to have fun with this show, kind of jabbing at it a little bit without having to just do what many people would consider quite the easy thing to do.
Well, you sound like two gentlemen who have never been to the Bible Man subreddit.
Oh my goodness, I hope that's a real
Is there
thing.
a Bibleman subreddit?
You know that there is.
Wow, the internet's an
Now-
amazing thing.
Now, here's one thing I'm going to say, just getting into it right off the top, too. I think that we kind of have a license to say whatever we want negatively about the Bibleman television show, because I don't know about the two of you guys, but I went to church a lot as a kid. I grew up going to church all the time. Even like at college, I was involved with a church group a little bit. I mean, I am not like totally an outsider when it comes to this stuff. Now, I don't really I don't have much of a religious life nowadays, but I grew up very familiar with church. And I feel like these shows and the songs included in the shows were written by someone who'd never been to church before, but they were trying to think of things people who go to church like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, with how this is kind of presented, you're right. And here's the thing: I'll be honest, I probably have more experience than everybody with this because I've never seen Bibleman before this, mind you. But I grew up in a religious household. My grandfather was actually a pastor and everything. So like I watched a lot of this.
I did not know that your grandfather was a pastor. I didn't know that.
Didn't your family have like a religious radio station, Adam?
They've worked for them, or my grandpa kind of owned a religious radio station at one point that was mostly just playing like gospel music and stuff.
You could have done the Bibleman serial, the radio serial.
And what does kind of owned mean?
I don't know all the specifics. Is what what that really means. Is like I don't know all the real ins and outs.
It's like when I was a kid, if somebody's dad worked at McDonald's, I just assumed his dad owned McDonald's.
Your dad owns McDonald's, right?
It's
like, no, he's a fry cook, but as far as you're aware, he owns it.
my mom was a teller when I was really young. I'm talking like 4 years old. My mom was a teller at the drive-thru at a bank. So I called that my mom's bank.
Yeah.
And then my dad worked at the local social services office, and I called that my dad's bank. Both of my parents worked at a bank, and both of my parents owned a bank. And only one of them was actually a bank, but that's just kind of like, that's kids' perspective.
And when all the kids came over and saw how rich you were because your parents worked at banks.
Oh, they did not see that. But I just want to say, like, especially the songs and even the name Bibleman, it really feels like the worst kind of pandering. It's like somebody who's like, and this is really ahead of the curve too, because we've got like wide release Christian themed movies that come out with like Topher Grace vehicles. Kirk Cameron, I think, is who really introduced us to the mainstream crossover kind of thing with those Left Behind movies. But it just kind of feels like, okay, we need to write some songs, but we've never actually read the Bible. So let's just make the songs like, I love to read the Bible. I love like this is like somebody said, okay, man, this Porsche is the best car I've ever driven. And I'm going to write a song about how awesome the owner's manual to my Porsche is. Like they're all singing songs about the owner's manual and not about the car itself.
Yeah, to me
And
that
it
was
really shows.
that. Yeah, that was
Like,
the most interesting thing about it was because to me, especially with both of these episodes that we have, they're practically the same thing. And let's talk about just kind of the idea of what the basic plot is. Now we need to
Hold on. Before we get into the nitty gritty of each episode, I did a lot of reading on Bibleman this weekend, especially Willie Ames. So we
Yes.
can go full general.
Well,
on
that's
this for
why
a
I
very
wanted
long time.
that's why I wanted to start with Willie Ames. I wanted to
Okay,
start
go ahead,
with
go
Willie Ames and just kind of like, just let us know who Willie Ames is. And my guess is that'll probably, dovetail into what you're looking at. Yeah.
So
Yes.
tell us, was Willie Ames, did he have like a late in life religious conversion? Was he
Yes.
always like super religious, or is he not
No.
religious at all? Okay.
No. So here's the thing: is that Willie Ames was a child actor. He's best known for being one of the kids on 8 Is Enough, and he was kind of like the funny one on 8 Is Enough. And he met Scott Baio because they were both child actors and they were both friends. So Scott Baio brings him along with him for both his show Charles in Charge and for any movie projects he was in, like Zapped and things like that. Because
Zapped is the first thing that popped into my mind.
Because they were at one point best friends. What ends up happening is that Willie Ames develops a massive coke habit. I mean, it is just a gigantic coke habit that he has, and it just overtakes him. And he even says in an interview at one point, he goes, I went from my life, like I had made such bad choices that I went from eating dinner at the White House to eventually I'm sleeping in the bushes. Just like that's how bad things got.
Of the
for
White
me.
House?
No, not at the White House. Not the bushes at the White House. Those are really nice bushes. though.
Excuse me, President
I'm
Reagan.
thinking like I was thinking like Barbara Bush and George Bush Sr., like he's sleeping in between them at the White House.
Hello, Mr.
Like
Bush.
that is a coke party I want to hear about. Started off as a dinner, wound up in bed with the Bushes.
Barb, could you scoot over? He needs to get in.
Watch Have Sex Less. Anyway, so things get really bad for him. He finds religion. He finds religion the way that most people, when they find it late in life, find religion, which is hugely and overwhelmingly.
And I'm going to guess it was part of a 12-step program too, because those kind of go hand in hand.
I would think that you were right about
Probably.
that, yes. But he then from there kind of understands that, oh, hey, there's this whole market that's being underutilized. Like, it's not being catered to nearly enough, which is religious folk. And so he brings what he knows of religion at this point, because he's about 7 or 8 years into his conversion to being a religious nut job. And keep in mind, I am not Bruce. I do not have to say things over and over again to make you understand that I'm not trying to offend you. There is a huge difference between being religious and being a religious nut job. Here is perfect example of this. I'm at a grocery store one night. There's a guy in front of me. He's got a way about him. He's dressed well. But he's too studious. If you catch my meaning when I say that, he's too put together, and it's an odd put together.
Yeah,
I immediately think, oh, this guy is a serial killer. It's the first thing I think. This guy is clearly, there's something fundamentally wrong with this guy. He is not behaving the way that people normally would in this situation. The social norms are completely out the window. He is pretending to be a human being right now in front of me. And so I'm kind of keeping half an eye on him to make sure, nothing goes bananas while we're checking out. He's in front of me. So he checks out, everything gets done. And just when he's about to hand the cashier some money, he ends up handing her a religious tract.
Was it a Jack Chick track, the one with the witches in it?
It's like a pamphlet with fun with people smiling on the cover.
Too bad.
I was like, oh, there you go. He's a religious nut job. That's what it is. Because it's the kind of thing that you see with Willie Ames now too, where he's always smiling, or like Kirk Cameron's the same way. He's always smiling, and you never see the smile hit their eyes. Like that's like that crazy look of like, I'm just always smiling, but I'm clearly sad inside, like that kind of thing.
The one thing I'll say about Kirk Cameron is like, he's been that way his whole life. You know what I mean? It's not like, Willie Ames was out there snorting coke off of various body parts, and then he has a revelation he's trying to make up for lost time. As far as I know, there's no document of ever of Kirk Cameron saying a bad word, like from the day he was born.
No, for sure. No,
like that guy was just born that way. And it's always like a different, sort of a different situation. In fact, I find myself more curious with someone like Kirk Cameron. I don't know if curious is the right term. I just find myself more interested in seeing how he communicates his message, rather than the guy who's like, don't go doing all the things I did, because I'm speaking from experience here, or something like, you get that, I guess, replacing one addiction with another kind of personality in somebody like Willie Ames. But with Kirk Cameron, he got his fix from where he gets it now, right from the beginning, which is, you don't see a lot of stories where kids burn out in Hollywood because they're too religious. Like, it's usually the other way around.
For sure. And so after, to get back to Willie Ames here. So Willie Ames, he finishes his time with the Bibleman folk, and he's not working after that. So he joins a cruise ship. He starts working on a cruise ship, and I don't mean as like the entertainment. I mean, he's working on the cruise ship as like just a dude on the boat.
I'd love it if somehow he got to be like the surgeon. If we're in international waters, you don't need a license. Let's let Willie Ames be the surgeon.
Well, there is weirder things that have happened. Like, for instance, the dude who played Scut Farkas on A Christmas Story, he's a prop master in L.A. So he shows up. His name comes up from time to time. Like, where like, oh, hey, I just worked with Scut Farkas. Like, it's what? You did? Well, that's cool. That kind of thing. Anyway. So Willie Ames, Willie Ames has had a really tough go. And a couple years ago, he's doing all the reality television shows, and he just completely loses his mind one morning because whatever reality show he's on, they keep pestering him, and he's just had enough, and he starts screaming at the camera people, which immediately is followed by, I thought that you were a religious man. If you're a religious man, why are you screaming at the camera? I mean, atheists can be just as annoying as super religious people.
That's true.
And so that's what happens. And so that's kind of where we are right now, where he's sort of found his way back, but it's with the hey, don't let this happen to you, like one of those things. He's sort of like a Corey Feldman, but without all of the crazy,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, there can be only one when it comes to Corey Feldman with the crazy.
It's true.
Now, here's something, too, I want to say about the show is I just want to say they call it Bibleman. There's almost no Bibleman in Bibleman, right?
Well, it's like Voltron. Voltron isn't always on Voltron. He shows up at the end.
But the show is always about Voltron. Like, even when Voltron's not on the show, you've got robot lions, you got space stuff going on, you got monsters. Like, this is like saying, this is like you're tuning in to watch Voltron, and instead you're getting kids bops. Yeah, you're getting kids bops. It's like Bibleman is doing a guest episode on a show that's about kids singing religious songs. Like even in the show, it's like the kids singing the religious song is the show in episode 2, and Bibleman is their special guest. Like, that is what this show is. This is, and there's frighteningly little explanation. Like, why why is Willie Ames hanging around with these kids that don't seem to have parents, but they put on shows?
Okay, so here is what I know, because I actually looked it up, because I could, like, why is Willie Ames there? You know, like I know he's Bible Man, but as his alter ego, why is he there? So he is the next door neighbor to the kid that the theater is like their Our Gang little, garage theater. Willie Ames lives next door to that kid and his dad. And so he helps out because he's also religious like the dad and the son are. And so he's like, hey, I'm going to help these guys out whichever way I can.
But in all fairness, we don't meet the dad till episode 2. In episode 1, there's just unexplained, unsupervised kids. And then Willie Ames walks in and like trips and drops a bunch of boxes, and they call him Miles. And I'm almost like, are we supposed to think he's a kid too? Like, because he's kind of short. I mean, in episode 1, it's almost like they're trying to pull off this 45-year-old guy's also one of the kids, or they think he is. Like it's really weird, that episode.
That is
they're
only
in a clubhouse made out of cardboard.
Ever thought that. No one has ever thought that Willie Ames is trying to play a child.
45-year-old man, is he a child? No one thought
you
that.
are the only one who has misconstrued that.
However, trips and falls down, and the kids are
like a way better TV show if he's supposed to be a child.
He puts on a propeller beanie.
And then in episode 2, there is the dad, but there's like 8 kids. Some of them are very clearly probably not his kids. Like they're all the same. Maybe he's got a lot of foster children, which is admirable. I don't know, but it kind of looks to me like this is like some creepy religious guy who's kidnapping kids and driving across. Like that whole Elizabeth Smart situation popped into my head when I'm watching this.
They're all there for their
production. No one
production.
thought that either, except for you. That's 2 for 2 from Bruce Leslie so far tonight, folks. So Adam, do you know what happens with that? Like, do you know why there's so many kids performing?
My guess is that, like, okay, so here's what I gather from watching these 2 episodes is that, like, this is like a gang of kids. Calling them a gang is probably not good. This is our gang of kids. Oh, there you go. That are just putting together these little shows that they obviously put on in, like, an overly large basement and everything. For those of you out there, think a really crappy version of Kids Incorporated, if you remember that from back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, but to me, it was not about the guy having a Benetton ad full of children to be a religious cult
Burger
or anything.
King Kids Club.
Yeah, it's not the Burger King Kids Club of Jesus. It's more of a, hey, we're putting on this show. Sadly, the show is the exact same thing for both things. But I want to read the plot synopsis here off of IMDb and tell me if you saw any of this in this program. Now, you said we watched the pilot, and I don't think that's true because here's the IMDb.
It is. I'm telling you, he is right because
it's episode 1 and 2.
Okay,
yeah, 1995.
Well, I'll tell you this. This never happens in the show, but it's on IMDb. Miles Peterson had everything: money, power, fame, until he lost it. Then Miles finds the power of God and harnesses that power to become Bibleman. Now, that being said, Bibleman seems to have 2 powers. Number 1, he can kind of transport himself from place to place. Okay, fair enough. That's kind of impressive. And then, really, outside of that, it is just reciting Bible verses back, which is, it's good that you know them and everything, but that's about all Bibleman really does. And boy, did the kids love him. He doesn't do much, but yet I've never seen someone get so much praise for doing not a whole heck of a lot and really showing up in an awkward, moment and everything. Because these kids, the shows that they're putting on, ultimately rest on Bibleman showing up. They don't talk about how they get in touch with Bibleman, where he comes from, why he would come there for any reason.
And it's important to point out, too, that a 30-minute episode of Bibleman may have 5 minutes of Bibleman, and it's going to have 20-plus minutes of kids singing songs that were written by someone who I think knows the Bible exists but doesn't actually read it. Like, I think Willie Ames really can recite those Bible verses. Like, that's his shtick. Like, he'll recite the Bible verse that's appropriate for the scenario he's in. That's, that I can go with, but that is such a small part of the show because we have kids singing songs like read your Bible every day, and they basically just say Monday, read your Bible. Tuesday, read your Bible. Wednesday, you get it? Like, and I'm not exaggerating. That is the song. And then it ends up with read your Bible every day. Then there's another one. It's like, I love to read my Bible. He loves to read his Bible. We love to read our Bible. And then there's another one where they're literally saying the Bible has 66 books. Here they are. Genesis, Exodus. I mean, they just...
And I'm going to be honest, that's not even the most fun way to go through the 66 books of the Bible. I've heard way better songs. I've heard many a different song, actually. Yeah. And frankly, theirs is kind of low on the totem pole.
But once again, the kids never sing like I can, there was that Aretha Franklin documentary that just recently did they get the sound synced up with the video and they released it. You know what I'm talking about, guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's called Amazing Grace, I believe.
Yeah, there's some absolutely bone-chilling gospel. I mean, that song that we use at the end of Preacher Podcast, people love that song, and that's a religious song. But I'll tell you, well, enough people did.
You watch that Aretha though, man. Like the hair stands up on your body, man. It's just like, she's so good in that.
And those songs sort of like communicate what their interpretation of the religious experience is. This is just, like I said, it's like I drove a Porsche and I say, how was the Porsche? It had a great owner's manual. I love that owner's manual. Chapter 1, transmission. Chapter 2, anti-lock brakes. Chapter 3, airbags. I mean, yeah, but how was the Porsche? The owner's manual. I read it today. Yeah, how was driving the car? I read the owner's manual on the way. I mean, it's so weird. It's like nobody actually has any idea about the message they're spreading other than, yeah, the Bible is involved.
I'm going to be honest with you. By the second episode, because the first episode, all right, it's got its themes, it does everything, it ends, good to go. And then when the second episode comes in, I'm like maybe 2 or 3 minutes into the second episode, I'm going, is this show... was it put together by people who sell Bibles? Because it really feels like that's all you're really trying to do is sell the Bible. Because because the problem
Nothing
is
about the content.
What these shows need, and what the good ones, and I put good in quotations, good for what they are. What those other religious shows do is they put in situations. They teach. Ultimately, these are for children. Let's not kid ourselves. The highest age person that should be watching this is probably 8 years old, and even then, they're probably, most of them are gonna, unless they grew up in a fairly religious household, will be like, this is not that good. But it's made for like 8-year-olds. But they normally have like some sort of, hey, here's the thing, here's your problem, here's how via God you can overcome this or do whatever. There's really none of that, and I think that's really the problem that this thing has is, and why that second episode made me go, are they just trying to sell Bibles? Because all they do is talk about how the Bible's a great book, and that's awesome, but you never really talk about what's inside the book that really... And
they sing a song about, like, read your Bible every day, and then suddenly they have, like, a 50s diner, and they're all dressed in 50s, singing kind of a doo-wop version of the exact same song.
Episode, yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, the production value, like, they have an actual jukebox in that diner. Like, the production value of the show in the garage, like the show within a show, much higher production value than the actual show itself on episode 1. Now, they pick it up a little bit on episode 2. They actually have a couple of locations and a Winnebago. But episode 1, like the show within a show, way higher production value than the actual show.
Yeah, which leads me to believe how many kids are coming to see the show. Because what they're doing is they're putting on a show in the kids' garage, and like maybe 10 to 15 kids show up to watch 10 kids sing,
and they are super enthused,
and they are really, really excited by the singing garage kids. And I said this to you guys off air earlier. This show, the closest relative to it I can describe it as is it's like watching Barney, but instead of Barney, you put in the Bible, and it's literally what it is. It's
very accurate.
It's Bibleman showing up occasionally to quote scripture. And that is where his power, because Adam, you got this wrong earlier. You said that he has like this superpower and that superpower. He doesn't have any superpowers. What he has is God listens to him. So when he's trapped, like when he's tied up in that chair in the second episode, he literally speaks to God, who God undoes his ropes.
So when he gets out of that, when he goes, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, and then all of a sudden he's out of the ropes. I'm like, come on now, this is not how you teach kids. That's not smart. You'd be like, well, if I just do this, then I'll be okay. It's like, no, don't do that.
So many things I want to talk about the difference between episode 1 and episode 2, which is really remarkable because they were released simultaneously on the same VHS tape. But the budget went way up, it looked like. And by way up, I mean minimum to minimum plus one or whatever. But still, it's like the first one is really bad. It's on a cardboard soundstage in a church basement somewhere. Like, I have no doubts that whole thing was filmed in a church basement somewhere. The second one, they have a house, they have a school, they have a Winnebago with a guy driving the Winnebago who wasn't in episode 1. And even though you can kind of infer he's somebody's dad, I feel like this is the sort of show where somebody should call him dad. Like I feel like you need to point out that the lone white man with a van full of children is at least related to one of those children. And what makes it even weirder, you have like 6 kids in episode 1, and then in episode 2, it's like, hey, we got 2 more kids in the group. Like, he's kidnapping kids each episode.
The tall kid who's in charge of the show, that it's his kid, because he does refer to the guy as dad.
Yeah, it's like one real quick passing thing.
And I caught on that Willie Ames' character is named Miles. Why they didn't just call him Willie, because that's a great name for Willie Ames. It's Willie. But do the Tony Danza thing with him. He's got a name that works in every situation. But anyway, I understood he was the neighbor because they said, oh, were the kids making too much noise again, Mr. Neighbor? But in the second episode, I thought they were actually going to have like A story, B story, some kind of like morality play, because the kids actually gamble with comic books. And I thought somewhere in there, when one kid loses, the other kid's going to like not take his comic book and tell him that gambling is wrong or something. But no, the kid's happy to win. He had 1 comic book at the beginning of the show and 2 comic books at the end, right?
Not for nothing, but that was one of that was a folded down the middle comic. I don't know how much he really got out of that. That tick off anybody else?
I loved young Adam Portrais in episode 2 because he's like, well, if you don't think he's going to show up, why are you going to the show? And he says, he literally says, I love to watch shows fail. I love to boo and hiss from the crowd. I love to watch people fail, is what the kid says.
I love how it's...
What was Adam doing in 1995? Is that him?
I was having that haircut. You're close darn too. But no, that kid, it was great. I like how it's like, I not only do I boo, I also hiss as if it's the 1930s. Hiss at them. That's like, I love how that's an appropriate, that was
insult. The Seinfeld episode around that time too. Somebody actually hissed from the crowd. He's like, "Who hisses?"
Boo hiss, boo hiss.
I also bought this box of tomatoes with me.
What do you know, Flung?
The part that so let's get back to Miles for a second. So Miles, according to the literature, is a man who had everything in the world you could possibly want. Wealth and fame and fortune.
Cocaine.
They don't explain where any of that comes from or what he does for a living.
He was on a TV show called Barrels and Barge.
Exactly. Then one night, in complete despair, he is outside and he raises his arms to the heavens and looks down, and there's a Bible in the mud, and he takes the Bible out and he immediately is like, man, I gotta get down with this. This is the stuff right here. And so that's what makes him Bibleman.
Now, let's talk about Bibleman's costume, shall we?
I love the fact that Willie Ames is out of shape, and they're just like, well, we will make the costume around it to make him look like he's got something going on. I love it. It's so stupid.
Now, Willie Ames looks perfect to be like a New Testament kid or something. Like, he really looks like the sidekick, not the main hero. Like, you'd be great if there was a Bibleman and Scripture Boy. I don't know what you call the sidekick. It's not my thing to name. Yeah,
he does have a sidekick now, but keep going.
Well, do you think any phone calls were made? I guess Willie Ames did help develop this from the beginning, right?
He's a producer, and I think
Yes.
he's directed a couple of these as well.
Producer, director, writer,
And
yeah,
wrote-
like
Yeah.
nobody's trying to like get in on that Bible Man action. I don't think it's hard to like be the sole creative force, but I just wonder if any phone calls were made. Like, do you think, for example, he just put the call out to see if Kirk Cameron wanted involved?
Hey, not for nothing, but Dean Cain, if I'm not mistaken, is a Christian. You could have got him in this. That'd have been something.
He would have been it would have been interesting.
He'd have been a
Yeah.
better Bible man than
I-
Willie freaking Ames would be. I'll tell you that right now.
Now, I understand the budget was low, and I also like to think he wasn't doing this for money or fame or accolades. I want to think he was doing this because he thought it was a way for him to do something worthwhile.
Do you think
Because
on
that's
any
the reason I do
you think
stuff.
any universe he goes, this is going to be wildly profitable?
There are people
For
who
sure.
profit off of these things now.
Oh yeah.
Well, I
For
guess
sure.
that's probably
But anyway, like, you think Nick Cage made the Left Behind reboot because he was born again?
true. He made that because of paychecks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I just wonder if there was at least a phone call made. But anyway, I know why he made this. I like to think that he understands it's low budget and it's going to get some ridicule. But still, that costume, even with no budget, like, I've seen what our local community theater can do with no budget for a costume, and they could probably do a little bit better than that. I mean, Sean, is it fair to say when it comes to this costume that Willie Ames wears as Bible Man that the cigar is wrapped? Like, they are really put minimal effort into that.
I would submit to you, sir, that this costume is no dumber than Black Lightning's costume.
Yeah.
However, it is definitely an unwrapped cigar. Yes.
Now, I've never watched the show, but I remember like seeing pictures of Bible Man here and there, and in my mind, I thought it was closer to a Black Lightning costume. Which, when you're on a broadcast television channel with a Warner Brothers production budget, you're held to a higher standard. But I think I could have gone with a Black Lightning level costume here instead of this thing. Like, they could at least put some neon and use some black lights, do a little something to pizzazz that up. I really remember glowing in the dark for some reason.
Scroll through the
I would
images on
guess-
IMDb. This costume has changed quite a bit and actually does
Yeah.
get kind of cool looking. I mean, for
does.
this.
For what it is, yes. Yeah,
I must have had memories of the later iterations then.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So there's a second Bible Man, because Willie Ames leaves in 2003, I want to say, and then they bring in another guy to play Bible Man. Because here's the secret to this: Bible Man, when it first comes out, makes up less than 1% of the sales of all Christian videos. But now, as we're sitting here, Bible Man is the third highest producer of Christian videos that there are.
Wow.
VeggieTales is 1, 321 Penguins is 2, and Bible Man is 3. And they've made cartoons off of this and action figures and everything. You can buy Halloween costumes of Bible Man, which seems antithetical, but what are you going to do?
I mean, G1 Bible Man costume. Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures here, and they do make it a lot better. But man, G1 is rough, and I mean, like, gee, it's rough. Like, somebody had to know that thing was rough. Like, it's not even like taped down evenly. Like, it like rides higher on one side than the other. The helmet, the side pieces on the helmet are kind of bent out. I mean, like, simple stuff, but it was rough.
Not too good. Now, I'll say this. You guys have, and I think to a degree rightfully, have bagged on a lot of the musical numbers and stuff in here. But I'm going out on a limb. I'm going to say the musical numbers are not as bad as they possibly could be. Now, there's a lot that's wrong with them. The 90s kind of like syntho sounds where like a lot of like horns are coming out of keyboards and stuff. It sounds pathetic. It sounds terrible. It's really bad. As far as the kids singing, it's not that bad. And frankly, the songs, for what they are, I don't think they're that terrible. I mean, like, they're catchy enough. I mean, they're not Beatles songs or anything like that, but like, at least they're catchy enough. And if you can get past how corny the music sounds and everything, you could do worse. I've seen a lot worse in these types of videos. I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from, is that I've seen
what
worse.
Videos are worse than this video?
More importantly, what videos are you watching, Adam?
First of all, now I'll tell you something that's better. You want to know something that's better than this, but is actually built for a even younger crowd than this is?
What's that?
There is this great show, and you can look it up. There's a lot of it on YouTube. It's this little kind of Muppet-esque little boy called Gerbert. He's orange. His eyes are close together. He's got these big, giant cheeks, and he talks like he's well. He's got one of those voices. It is like one of the most sickeningly sweet little things that you'll ever see in your entire life. And then they go to a bunch of 4-year-olds singing, Jesus Loves the Little Children or something like that. You can fast forward through that. But like with the little puppet, I don't know. There's something about him that is just...
Why are you watching Gerbert or whatever his name is?
Because I was a child. I'm not watching it at 37.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that, to be honest. I thought maybe
no.
you watched it recently.
As a child, like I would go to my grandma had many of these things on VHS and everything, so I would watch them. And frankly, I mean, just it was like watching a really crummy Christian version of the Muppet Show with a little bit of morals and stuff, and really bad, singing from 4-year-olds in there.
Now, I've got a question, guys. So they made these 2 episodes, put it on VHS, and sold it in 1995. And then no more episodes, only 2 episodes. I guess we'll call it season 1. Then in 1996, they did season 2. Only 1 episode in 1998, so they took 2 years off. Like, were these initial videos generating revenue, or was this something that, like, they're just going to keep going back to the drawing board until they make it work? Like did this kind of unexpectedly get a small fire that they sort of added a little tinder to until they built it to being the 3rd biggest Bible video series ever? Or did they just like brute force it? Like, was nobody interested in these early ones, and they just kept doing it and doing it?
Here's what they ended up doing, right? So what they keep trying to change the formula, because this first iteration, the 4 episodes of the kids putting on a show, and singing for 25 minutes, they realize that isn't working. So they come back with Bibleman Adventures.
Yeah, that's what we should have in this, is an actual adventure, as opposed to, like you said, 30 minutes worth of singing, which, could be worse. But again, there's no story, there's no conflict. It's just like, hey, by the way, read your Bible. And again, by that 2nd episode, I'm like, I think the Bible lobby's in on this one.
Boy, for that episode 1.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the 2nd version is Bibleman Adventures. And Bibleman Adventures is much more superhero based, right?
So that's where we should have probably went.
Yeah,
to.
Probably. But what are you gonna do? Then they figure it out. They figure out the problem, which is that you're not going to make a live action version of this without tons of money that works. Yeah. So they end up making like this CGI version of like really poorly computer animated Bibleman show.
Looks like Lawnmower Man 2, I'd imagine.
Ones.
And that gets the kids.
Yeah.
That's literally what starts setting it off.
And that's something else. Something else I found along the way too is they would do like live stage shows.
Yes.
And I don't know, it's one of those things where like I almost wonder if they paid for stage time. Like I don't know that if anybody was actually buying tickets.
Sir, the circuit, the mega church circuit, is one of the most lucrative things you could possibly find yourself on.
But these live shows were in 99 and 2000. Was it already getting lucrative for that?
Sure.
Because some of their videos are just like literally set up a camcorder. It doesn't look like I thought this was a fan-made Bibleman thing. When I was watching, I was like, what is this? This is like some local church did their own Bibleman play. And then I realized, no, this is official Bibleman. They set up a tripod with a camera while they were doing a stage show in a church. And they've got some of those videos out there, too, the live videos.
I haven't seen any of those.
Oh, you're missing out.
Am I?
Are you, though? I don't really know.
So here is what I can tell you about the level of competence of the children's acting. Is not a single one of these kids goes on and has a gigantic music career.
And that crushed my heart. Like, not even a music career, but at least an acting career. Because I looked real closely at the credits because I wanted to see something like I wanted to see that Post Malone was one of these kids or something. Like, I just wanted something hilarious to come out of it. I wanted to see like there are the well, this was in Kansas City, was probably part of the reason why it didn't happen. But there are the Hollywood families, the Jack Blacks, and even like Billie Eilish. I mean, there are these people whose parents have decided when they're born they're going to be, and I thought maybe one of those. I wanted to see where's the Justin Timberlake of this group. I wanted this to be like Mickey Mouse Club. I wanted something, but I wanted it to be like somebody who. Like Eli Roth. I wanted it to just be atrocious, the person that I found.
The closest that you get
that
to it, from what I can tell, the closest that you can get to it is an actor named Brett Harrison.
Right.
He's
not in any of the episodes that we saw.
Nothing that we watched, that's for sure. That's correct.
Right. But keep going.
I wanted one of those kids to just be somebody I've heard of. Like, even if one of those kids grew up to be like a senator from Kansas, like anything. I wanted anything to come out of that, but I read those entire cast lists for nothing.
I'll say this, according to this picture on IMDb, Willie Ames looks a lot better today than he did back then in the mid-'90s. He looks like an older gentleman now, but he looks like he's far better put together. Willie Ames from the 80s or 90s looks like he's...
Does he have white hair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just looks like a regular
I
kind
thought
of
he looked... Honestly, I thought he looked better than I expected when I watched episode 1 of Bibleman. And also, it's like this thing where, there's a thing where it's like you look at an NBA team and like the guy who's like the worst player in the NBA, the absolute worst player in the NBA is going to make anybody you've ever met in your life look ridiculous on the basketball court. You know what I mean? Like the guy that everybody talks about, he's terrible. He shouldn't even be playing in the league. He's still incredibly good at basketball. And then sometimes there's this thing where you've got like absolutely amateur actors, no actors, and you get somebody, even if they are as insignificant perhaps in the big picture as Willie Ames, that you just really can tell that difference in line delivery from the untrained kids and Willie Ames. I felt a little bit of that.
It's fine. I don't know if I go quite that far, but
he's no man. But he kind of has that thing to it.
True. All right. Before we get down to our
wait, before we do that, I just want to say, can we sort of say we don't need to come back to this property? Yeah, because I just don't think that, I don't know if people are interested in hearing us talking about it. I don't know that many people have seen the videos. I can't recommend they watch them. I think we dodged as much of a bullet as we could this time around. We just let people who enjoy Bibleman enjoy it, and we won't come back to this.
I never say never, but I'm not in any rush. I'll tell you that. But before we get down to our rating here and everything, we do have to ask ourselves one of the most important questions anyone can ask in their day is, how did this movie, television show, whatever you'd like to call it, relate back to Sylvester Stallone?
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Sometimes you think you have a good idea and you end up screwing yourself royally in the process. Like when you decide to date that crazy person, because even though you know they're crazy, you date them anyway because you find them attractive. And you think you're willing to put up with the crazy for all the great, let's call it adult times you'll have. Let's say this next story is something I completely made up off the top of my head and say that you don't realize and we'll say it like this. You don't realize that the trouble you're in until one night you're sitting with them at a bar and grill that they choose to go to. They get drunk and throw a pool ball at a guy because he had the audacity to brush up against them and the guy didn't say sorry.
Boy.
As a for instance, something I just completely made up off the top of my head.
Oh, absolutely.
And look, I'm more than willing to admit that there are times that I was the crazy one, like the relationship I have with the other row boys of HMP. I know I'm the crazy one. I suggested we watch this nightmare of IP that will outlive us all. I also screwed myself personally because I have to find the Stallone connection, and let's face it, with the exception of Willie Ames, everyone involved in the making of this program was probably left to die on a slow-moving iceberg, as they should be. Willie Ames is the rarest type of actor, not because he's good, because he isn't, but because in 1982, Willie Ames was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Actor for 2 different roles in 2 different movies.
Wow.
In the movie Paradise for his role as David, whatever that is, and Zapped, where he played the role of Peyton Nichols. And here's the thing, nominated for 2 different movies, didn't even win.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Because in 1982, Sir Laurence Olivier won for his portrayal of Douglas MacArthur in the movie Inchin, a movie I'd never heard of before today, but it was a massive flop, due in large part to the fact that Sir Laurence Olivier was playing one of the most famous American generals of all time. And you know who's won the second most Razzie Awards in the history of the Razzies? None other than Sylvester Shower Pooper Stallone, who's won 9 different times.
Wow.
I don't know what he's done to upset the mean-spirited people who created the Razzie Awards, but he's totally on their radar. Maybe he used their shower. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection is Willie Ames. For those who are wondering, Madonna has the most Razzie Awards in history because she's a terrible actress as well as being a terrible person. Thank you. I'm Sean Kovacs. Thank you.
Hey, at least she put out some good music for the first 25 years or so. But
she's a fantastic musician.
But that's about where she stops. Over here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on over to Facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the screen. Bruce, where does Bibleman fall on the Robin rating system for you?
Man, is ineligible a term? We need to add it doesn't qualify to be rated, because Michelin will just not even rate restaurants. It's like, no, come on, get serious. We rate real restaurants.
I'm not going to.
Well, I'm going to read a quote I found on Wikipedia. So you don't know if it's true or not because it's on Wikipedia. But a guy from the UK named David Mitchell, who apparently is on TV over there, here's what he had to say about Bibleman in 2009. I don't have any idea why he was talking about Bibleman in 2009, but this is a direct quote. Quote, "The thing that struck me most about it is quite how badly it is made, to the extent that you must think it's been made by anti-Christian people to make Christianity look as naff and discouraging and artless as possible," end quote. I even kind of said that. I felt like this was primarily made by people who had never been to church, but they wanted to guess what people who go to church like. It's also got no superheroing really in it. I mean, you got little vignettes that, seriously little vignettes, not enough. I might have been into it if there was more sword fighting or something. But
they kind of introduce a villain, but not really in both episodes. They're like, oh, look, a villain, and it really has nothing to do with nothing.
And the far and away the best performance of episode 1 is the 30 seconds of the villain guy with green paint on his face cackling and stuff. That's the kind of hammy acting I could get into, and I was expecting.
Clearly ripping off Mark Hamill's Joker laugh.
To the point that I wondered, wow, how did they get Mark Hamill to do this? Was he that down on his luck in 95? Anyway, if I have to give it a rating, it's a Jason Todd. I mean, if you love Bibleman, you already know you love it. I don't think this 1995 property is out there hoping new people discover it. You already discovered it if you love it. If you haven't discovered it, no need to check into it. There's plenty of stuff out there for you.
Sean, this is your baby. You birthed this thing. It's your fault. What's your rating?
Sometimes you have to kill your babies.
It's true.
Jason Todd. The one thing that we never spoke about this week is the meme from the early 2010s, I want to say. I'm not even sure. Which is just a still photo of Willie Ames, and it says, "Bibleman is watching you masturbate," which is the best thing that's ever come out of this property.
Oh, no.
It is the best part. This thing is, I can't think of anything we've watched that's worse than this. This is the worst. It is a Jason Todd.
If we had only solely watched the first episode, I would have had this at a very high rating because it's so stupid. It did remind me of a lot of the, little just straight to video religious stuff that I'd seen back in the day and everything. It is corny. It is silly. It's the mid 90s. It's not great, but there is something about it that I kind of like. Now, when it got to the second episode, though, they just basically did the exact same thing again, and that was a super letdown. And that's where I think it fell apart for me come episode 2. I know that you should have really made up your mind with episode 1, but episode 2 put me in a little bit of a trepidatious thing. So I am going to rate this the not often or not even technically on the official regular Robin rating system. I'm going to rate this as a Carrie Kelly because this is not for everybody. But if you grew up with this stuff and you have some sort of you can look back with it with kind of an ironic, funny vibe with it, which is kind of what I did. I was like, I remember all kinds of stuff that was like this. It's not very good. It's super laughable and it's dumb, but to me, there's some sort of place that I had a lot of fun with that first episode. The second episode was a drag. Took a long time to get through. But the first one, it could be worse. So I'm going to go Carrie Kelly on this one. I can't believe that I'm sure I was going to be at the bottom of the barrel, but I had enough fun with it to kind of, if indeed this is something that was, in your vocabulary when you were younger, you could do worse. You could listen to Lamb Chop. I mean, Lamb Chop's terrible. I'd watch this before Lamb Chop. Not before VeggieTales, but even then, I was too old for that when that came out. But anyway, that's it, everybody. Holy cow. Thanks, Patreon people. Thanks to Sean for bringing it up. And thanks for the people over at patreon.com/HMP for voting it in there. Yeah, we probably won't be going back to this.
Well, at least we have a new marker for this is as low as it gets. We can't get lower than that.
Yeah, it's certainly not as far as production goes. It's going to be pretty tight on that one. That's for darn sure.
You know that jarring feeling of when you get out of a sauna and you run and jump into a snowbank, going from the extreme hot to the extreme cold. That sort of jarring feeling. That's what it's like going from the Joker to Bibleman in a week.
Ebbs and flows, baby. Ebbs and flows. That's what we do over here. Next week, however, that's going to be a little bit more interesting. We'll talk about that in just half a second here. In the meantime, Bruce, where might we find more of your work on the internet? Anything special going on this week?
Well, there's a slight chance that we may have an episode of the Redford administration coming out soon.
But only slight. No, it's definite. What are you talking about? We got to get on the charts, even though we'll be at the bottom of them. We got to get on them.
I'm thinking about quickly changing it to the Bibleman show, and we just watch every single episode and live performance and review the action figures and the board game and the video game and the books.
And all of a sudden, H&P doesn't exist anymore. What happened? Oh, well. Sean, will you be there?
Oh, I'll definitely be at the Redford administration. I'm looking forward to this this show, the Watchmen show, and I'm looking forward to never having to watch Bibleman ever again.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll be able to set both of those up. So check us out on there, man. If you haven't subscribed yet, the Redford administration, wherever you find podcasts, we'd really appreciate you if you went out and help push along our new endeavor and everything. That episode should be out probably around somewhere in the Tuesday-ish area, if not Wednesday. So please check that out. Redford Administration, a Watchmen podcast. Check it out. That's it. Next week, everybody, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We've had a plan, but I don't know if that plan is going to 100% go through. But let's just call next week a spooky Halloween episode for you over there at HMP. So we'll leave it at that. That is it, everybody. Join us next week for something super extra spooky and scary for sweet Shanzi Kovacs from the internet. Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty David.
The Bibleman's coming, so you better stick around. A brand new episode is coming to your town. A whole lot of fun with the greatest book of all. Yeah, the Bibleman's coming and it's gonna be a ball.
Go get everyone you know.
'Cause it's just about time for the Bibleman show.
It's the Bible, it's the Bible, it's the Bibleman show.
We're learning how to